San Francisco, 1955. A row of apartments on Telegraph Hill, rented by the Central Intelligence Agency. Inside, two-way mirrors, hidden microphones, and a team from the Technical Services Division. Prostitutes lured men off the street. Once inside, the targets were dosed with LSD without their knowledge, and while the drugs took hold, CIA officers watched through the glass and filmed everything. They called it Operation Midnight Climax. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the finding of the United States Senate Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with Respect to Intelligence Activities, the Church Committee, published as Senate Report 94-755 in 1976. The safe houses ran in San Francisco and New York for over a decade. When it was over, the CIA director ordered the files destroyed. But enough survived for the Senate to piece together what had happened. And what the Senate found was only the beginning. This is the disclosure files. And today, we are going deep on the most connected node on the entire map, the intelligence apparatus. The intelligence apparatus sits in the power structures branch of the disclosure files map. It represents the documented operations of the CIA, FBI, NSA, MI6, Mossad, and the Five Eyes Alliance, not as abstract institutions, but as actors in specific, sourced events. If you look at this node's position on the map, one thing is immediately obvious. It connects to everything. This single node has 25 connections to other nodes across the map. That is more than any other node, by a factor of 2. It connects to media and narrative control, how the intelligence community shaped what Americans were allowed to hear. It connects to science and technology, classified patents, stolen software, surveillance infrastructure built by intelligence alumni. It connects to hidden history, assassinations, covert operations, and the events that shaped the 20th century. It connects to health and biological control, experiments on unwitting American citizens that were denied for decades before being confirmed by the government's own records. It connects to cosmology and origins, the UAP programs and remote viewing research the agencies spent millions on. And it connects to ritual and occult systems, not through speculation, but through the documented operative belief systems revealed in declassified files. Every major branch on this map has at least one documented link back to the intelligence community. And this matters because these connections are not editorial choices. They are not drawn from rumor or inference. They come from congressional investigations with subpoena power, federal court records, declassified documents obtained through FOIA, and the agency's own internal reports. 5 key evidence claims anchor this node. 4 are classified green, documented in primary sources. 1 is yellow, credible testimony from a named intelligence operative. The National Security Act of 1947 created the modern intelligence infrastructure under President Truman. The NSA was established. The CIA was born. And from that moment forward, a pattern emerges in the public record: sexual blackmail, media infiltration, financial networks, and domestic surveillance, practiced continuously from the 1950s to the present day. Not as aberrations. Not as rogue operations. As institutional doctrine. Documented by the government itself, in documents it tried to destroy. Let me show you what the record contains. We start where the Senate started. Operation Midnight Climax. The Church Committee documented that CIA safe houses in San Francisco and New York were used to drug and film unwitting targets during sexual encounters. The Technical Services Division operated these facilities, the same TSD where CIA officer Frank Terpil later worked. When CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of MKULTRA files in 1973, most of the records were lost forever. The committee reconstructed what it could from surviving financial documents and the testimony of those willing to talk. But what survived was enough to establish a pattern that would repeat for the next 50 years. The FBI was running its own parallel operations. Between 1956 and 1971, the Bureau carried out 2,300 approved COINTELPRO actions against American citizens. FBI Assistant Director William Sullivan testified under oath before the Church Committee. His words, "No holds were barred. We have used these techniques against Soviet agents. The same methods were brought home against any organization against which we were targeted. We did not differentiate." That is sworn congressional testimony from the man who ran the program. Sexual disruption was an explicit technique, anonymous letters to spouses, surveillance gathered compromising material, and systematic campaigns to destroy personal relationships. The most documented target was Martin Luther King Jr. The FBI placed King under comprehensive sexual surveillance. Agents in the FBI laboratory prepared composite sex tapes, and those tapes were mailed to King's wife, along with an anonymous letter urging him to take his own life before the recording became public. When the Church Committee asked how this was allowed, Attorney General Ramsey Clark testified he was too busy to know what the Bureau was doing. Attorney General Katzenbach said he could not have stopped it anyway. And the NSA's own watch list included members of the Church Committee itself. The senators investigating these programs were themselves under surveillance. Classification, documented. Source, Church Committee testimony, exhibits, and the Bureau's own internal memoranda. Then the practice evolved beyond the Bureau. In the late 1970s, CIA officer Edwin Wilson and his partner Frank Terpil ran sexual blackmail operations targeting members of Congress. Terpil described it in his own words. Wilson's agency job was to subvert members of both houses by any means necessary. Sexual fantasy in the flesh. Permanently recorded via selected cameras. TSD. This was not an outsider's accusation. This was a CIA operative describing his own colleague's assignment, naming the same technical services division that ran Midnight Climax 2 decades earlier. They operated out of the Georgetown Club in Washington, documented by the Washington Post as a Korean intelligence front. The club's president was Robert Keith Gray, CEO of Hill and Knowlton and Reagan's deputy communications director under CIA Director William Casey. A Navy review described the Gray-Wilson relationship as one of unqualified trust. In the 1980s, the operation had a new face. Craig Spence was a Washington lobbyist who ran bug departments and brought minors into the Bush White House. The Washington Times documented this extensively in 1989. Spence boasted of his CIA connections. He named Donald Gregg, the National Security Advisor and former CIA officer under William Casey, as his contact. Party guests included Roy Cohn, William Casey, and William Safire. When Spence realized the story was breaking, he told a journalist on the record, the CIA would kill him and make it look like a suicide. He was found dead in a room at the Ritz-Carlton. It was ruled a suicide. And connecting all of these operations is a document that explains why they were never prosecuted from within. From 1982 to 1995, a secret memorandum of understanding between the CIA and the Department of Justice exempted the CIA from reporting drug trafficking crimes committed by its assets and contractors. This was not a rumor or a leak. This was confirmed by the CIA Inspector General's own report, Volume 2, published 1998. The same Iran-Contra networks running covert arms and drug operations were simultaneously operating child trafficking rings. Larry King, who ran the Franklin Credit Union, funded the Contras, documented by the Omaha World Herald. Covenant House Guatemala, linked to CIA asset Alejos Arzu, was connected to the same procurement network. Arms, drugs, and trafficking, run by the same people, protected by the same legal framework. The same institutional practice. Evolving operational methods. Exposed not by conspiracy theorists, but by congressional investigators, federal courts, and the agency's own declassified records. Now let's look at what the map reveals when you follow the threads outward from the intelligence apparatus. The first connection runs to media. Operation Mockingbird, confirmed by the Church Committee, established that the CIA maintained relationships with over 400 American journalists and every major news organization. Carl Bernstein documented this in Rolling Stone in 1977. The Church Committee produced 7 case studies of covert media operations. Only the Chile study was released. The CIA requested the other 6 remain classified. But the method evolved beyond direct recruitment. CIA Director William Casey needed private sector support for illegal domestic propaganda operations during Iran-Contra. Roy Cohn brokered a meeting, Reagan, Rupert Murdoch, Cohn, and USIA Director Charles Wick. They were photographed together in the Oval Office in 1983. The photo is in the Reagan Library. Iran-Contra documents and the Reagan Library confirm that Murdoch was viewed as a source for private funding. Murdoch became Casey's top propaganda ally. He expanded his American media holdings. And Fox Broadcasting Corporation was created in 1987. The documented trajectory runs from direct journalist recruitment in the 50s, through media ownership structures in the 80s, to the landscape we live in today. The second connection runs to banking. The Kerry Brown Senate report of 1992 documented that BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, was secretly controlled by CIA's own assets. Kamal Adam, the CIA's principal liaison in the Middle East from the mid-60s through 1979, was the lead frontman for BCCI's takeover of First American Bankshares, the largest bank holding company in Washington, D.C. When Adam testified before the Federal Reserve in April 1981, he never disclosed his intelligence background. When regulators tried to locate his successor, Abdul Rauf Khalil, they found him frequently in the offices of the CIA station chief in Saudi Arabia. The CIA's legal explanation for why none of Director Casey's involvement was documented is worth hearing verbatim. The Senate report states, Casey acted as advisor to the president, not as director of Central Intelligence, therefore outside the record-keeping of the CIA, undocumented. Fully deniable. Effectively irretrievable. The third connection runs to surveillance. An FBI confidential human source memo from October 2020 stated that Jeffrey Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent, trained as a spy under former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. DOJ released emails show Epstein joking with Barak about Mossad connections. Barak appeared over 4,000 times in the Epstein files. He chaired Carbine, a surveillance technology startup staffed by Unit 8200 alumni and funded in part by Epstein. Former CIA Director David Petraeus was also an investor. DOJ audio from February 2013 captured Epstein telling Barak to check out Palantir and brokering him a board seat. The Wexner Foundation paid Barak $2.4 million for unspecified research. The same practice documented in Midnight Climax in the 1950s, drugging, filming, and compromising targets, appears to have continued, through different operators and evolving technology, into the 21st century. The scale of these connections is what the map makes visible. 25 documented links from one node, spanning every branch. So what does the Intelligence Apparatus node tell us about the larger pattern? It tells us that the same institutional practice has been documented across 7 decades. Midnight Climax in the 50s. COINTELPRO through the 60s and 70s. Wilson and Terpil in the late 70s. Craig Spence in the 80s. Epstein from the 90s through 2019. Each time, the operation was denied while it was active. Each time, it was later confirmed, by congressional investigation, by federal court records, or by the agency's own internal documents. The methods evolved. Safe houses became bugged apartments became surveillance technology startups. LSD doses became sex tapes became digital compromat. But the institutional logic never changed: compromise targets, control behavior, protect the operation from prosecution. 4 of the 5 featured evidence claims on this node are classified green, documented in primary government sources. The 5th is classified yellow, credible, from a named CIA operative describing his own work. This is not a pattern you have to infer. It is a pattern the government has already admitted to, piece by piece, in documents it was forced to release. The map simply puts those pieces in one place so you can finally see the shape of it. Every claim sourced. Every classification visible. Every connection mapped. The disclosure files. The interactive map is live right now. Every source is linked. Click any node, read the primary documents yourself, and draw your own conclusions. You do not have to take my word for any of this. The sources are right there. Church committee transcripts. Senate reports. FOIA releases. Court filings. Read them. If you found this valuable, subscribe and share this with someone who reads primary sources. Next episode, we follow one of those 25 threads to its source: family networks, the Wexner Foundation, the mega group, and the dynastic structures that fund what the intelligence agencies operate. That is where the money comes from. And the documents are just as clear. The disclosure files. See you there.